Need for Speed Carbon in 2025 is kind of weird. While Carbon isn't as well revered as the other games in the Black Box era, it's still highly praised, especially compared to more recent installments in the series, but many would say that Carbon marks the beginning of the end for the golden era of Need for Speed. Carbon picks up right after Most Wanted, where after escaping Rockport, you end up on your way to Palmont City through its winding canyons in your M3 GTR, which you worked so hard to get in the last game. Unfortunately, you aren't alone.
Hey, guess who's back?
And come on, we just got that thing back. After totaling the M3, Darius saves you from Cross and his girlfriend Nikki takes you downtown to get a new car and show us the ropes. The story revolves around piecing together a mystery about the night you took off to Rockport. On that night, there was this race you were a part of. You were winning the race, but then everything went to hell. Now you gotta clear your reputation in the present day and figure out exactly what happened and why by forming a crew and conquering the city. The story is okay, I guess? It's decent for racing game standards, but it's honestly a bit confusing and the characters feel a bit underbaked. Throughout the game, you unlock new members for your crew and each one of them tells you what they saw on that night. And through this, you learn that a bunch of weird stuff was happening that night. You learn that the cops hit everybody except you with an EMP, that the cops let you escape, and that the bag that Nikki was holding with the prize money was switched. With all this info, you deduce that you were framed. But who could have done it? Darius. It's incredibly obvious, and you can tell just by the way he acts.
You got it, kid. I always said you did. Now the others are starting to believe too. Don't give up now, you're close.
Anyways, Darius then immediately sells you out, but then Nikki saves you from Cross. Afterwards, you take over Darius's territory and you kick him out of town. Then the game just ends with you and Nikki awkwardly standing there, and it just cuts to this abrupt congratulations screen. The story had a lot of potential, but it's bogged down by this focus on the past instead of fleshing out characters in the present, especially Nikki. The game heavily implies that she was your girlfriend, but doesn't expand on it much other than her trust in you was destroyed after this race, and halfway through the game she realizes Darius was behind everything. I think the biggest problem with this story is that the game is so short. You can complete the entire game in less than 8 hours, and because of this, you just don't have time for anything. So you have all these ideas floating around that just don't go anywhere. I think the game could have used 2 or 3 more bosses in order to give the game a few more hours that could be used to expand the plot and the characters. This would have helped the pacing a lot, but with that said, Need for Speed was never the best at its stories, so let's look at the gameplay instead. For starters, I really like the way Carbon handles its vehicle choice. Each car is assigned one of 3 classes: Tuner, Exotic, or Muscle. This class will give you a general idea on how the car is going to feel, and they each have their own strengths and weaknesses. Tuners have top-notch handling, Exotics are generally more balanced, and Muscles, well, Muscles have the best acceleration in the game by far, which work great for Palmont's layout, but they have by far the worst handling cars in the whole game. You're just barely in control, and while it's almost like driving on ice with them, they're very fun to play with. The customization is also pretty good. Most Wanted had to make sacrifices in certain areas in order to make room for the pursuits in that game. And while Carbon doesn't reach the same insanity and customization as the Underground series, it's still a big improvement over Most Wanted. For one, a proper livery editor is finally in the game. And while I'm no good with it, it lets you wrap your car whatever way you want. There's also a new feature called Auto Sculpt. This lets you essentially make your own body kit using blueprints of different parts, and using sliders to adjust those parts to look how you want them to. In Most Wanted, all you had for parts was a handful of pre-made body kits for each car. This worked fine for Most Wanted, but I think it's really nice to have Auto Sculpt in this game. Though if you don't want anything to do with it, you can still choose body kits just like in Most Wanted. But what good is customizing if you can't actually drive the thing, right? So let's talk about Carbon's handling. The game's overall handling model is very similar to Most Wanted. Just like that game, this game's idea of arcade racing is giving you extreme grip, allowing you to corner at high speeds. There are 2 differences though. First off, while the sense of speed is still intact, the actual speed has been lowered, both by vehicle performance, but also the map design. With Palmont's tighter road system, it's much harder to build speed here than it was in Rockport. Side note, I actually really like Palmont. Not as much as Rockport, but I appreciate how each district looks unique. And I will say, I prefer the nighttime aesthetic to the daytime one. My favorite district is probably Silverton. I really like the Las Vegas-esque neon lights and casinos that add a lot of color to the environment and are just really nice to look at. But back on track. The speed difference can be very disappointing to some people, and you can't really blame them. Most Wanted had you blasting down roads going over 300 km per hour in its endgame. But in Carbon, most cars generally stay around the 200 to 250 range, though the overall racing is improved from Most Wanted, as rubber banding is generally toned down, so races feel a bit more fair, and now you're in a race with 7 other drivers rather than the 3 from earlier games, which makes good use of the upgraded power from the 7th generation of consoles. This makes the racing a bit more lively. The rivals in this game also see an improvement from the ones in Most Wanted. While there's only a fraction of them, where you're taking down 4 crew leaders rather than the 15 blacklist members, the game kind of makes up for it by giving these 4 some more screen time, with them occasionally trash talking you.
You think you're making a name for yourself? Keep racing through my territory and I'll waste you and your reputation.
And during a race with them, you can actually see a facecam appear to show their reactions, which helps make them feel a little bit more alive. Crews are a really big part of Carbon. In fact, you're no longer racing solo. You also build a crew, and you can bring one of your crewmates into most of the game's races as a wingman. Each wingman is given a role. There are 3 types of wingmen: blockers, drafters, and scouts, and each of them do what you would expect them to do. Blockers take your opponent off the road, drafters let you use them to slipstream, and scouts will stay in front of you to find shortcuts up ahead. My favorite type by far are the drafters. I just really love the stupid speeds you can get with them, since they less so let you slipstream behind them, and more so pull you in with a tractor beam, allowing you to take corners at ridiculous speeds. Though, sometimes they get a little confused. Like that. In concept, wingmen are great and add a lot of spice to the races, but in practice, they maybe work a little too well. Blockers don't really have this problem, but scouts and drafters, well, since they need to be in front of you to be useful, they rubber band to catch up to you, and the game is not subtle about this, especially if you're using a scout. And since your wingman's win still counts as your win, there isn't really much trouble winning races, which is a shame, and because of this, sometimes I wish the game would give you the choice of racing alone, maybe giving you a bit more cash for coming out on top as a payoff for the increased difficulty. But even with this, I still find that it's a lot of fun. Outside of regular racing, drifting makes a return here from the Underground games. This mode is a hell of a lot of fun, perfectly blending speed and style. While in a drift event, the game's physics are drastically altered, allowing you to do insane things. Hell, you're drifting in 4th and 5th gear, going like 200 around every corner. Does it make any realistic sense? No, not in the slightest. Is it fun and satisfying? Yes. There are 2 types of drift events. Drift events where you have a couple laps around a closed circuit, and the better of the 2, events where you're drifting down the canyon side like it's Initial D. The canyon tracks are very fun. They are tight, windy roads paired with weak guardrails, so if you fly off the path, you instantly lose and have to restart the race. It's insanely satisfying to just flow down the mountain in a perfect chain. The only issue with the mode is, well, yeah. The opponents don't really put up much of a fight, and unless you're extremely drunk, these events are pretty much freebies. But speaking of canyons, the best mode in this game are the canyon duels. These are boss events, and while they don't happen often, when they do, they're a lot of fun. The premise is simple. You and your rival race down a mountainside, and there are 2 roles, the leader and the follower. As the leader, you have to try and outrun the follower, and as the follower, you have to stay as close to the leader as possible. Once you make it to the bottom, you switch sides, and the winner is decided by which one of you did a better job of staying on top of the leader. Just like in drift events, there are weak guardrails, and if you fall off, you have to restart the duel from the top. You also can't use the speed breaker mechanic or nitrous during canyon duels, so these events serve as a proper test of your driving ability. And the music is so intense, I love it. It really makes you feel the need to just focus, especially with that percussion. Speaking of which, Carbon has a really good OST. Not only is the licensed soundtrack great, but Carbon also expands on the music by having way more orchestral pieces in the soundtrack. Most Wanted had an orchestral soundtrack for Pursuits made by Paul Linford, which did a lot in making them feel really intense. And Carbon expands on that by also having an orchestral soundtrack for the races done by Trevor Morris. Just like Most Wanted's pursuits, this OST is dynamic. The race OST has sections for when it's a close race, if you're pulling away, and my favorite are these little sections where you can hear one of the car class themes coming through when they pass you in a race. These tracks are all really good and help elevate that intense feeling while racing in a way that licensed tracks just can't match. Morris also worked with Extract to make a fusion between orchestral and synthesized music. This works surprisingly well and gives Carbon's soundtrack such a unique voice that I haven't really heard in any other game. Oh, and yeah, you heard me right. Car classes have their own distinct themes. I really love how the music captures the essence of the class you're driving, with an electronic beat for tuners, a grime and hip-hop style for exotics, and rock music for muscle cars. I absolutely love when a racing game can give bits of personality to a car like this. Anyways, outside of racing, the open world exists, and police chases make a return here for Most Wanted, and they're cool, I guess? The thing is, they're kinda shoehorned in since they were literally a copy and paste job, everything down to Paul Linford's score and the police radio chatter, which leads to a lot of dialogue that makes no sense, like this one. Or another thing they no longer do is point out your last known position. In Most Wanted, they'd say exactly where you were last spotted.
Patrol Southeast, be advised. We've got multiple complaints about a reckless driver who was last seen eastbound on Hastings Road. Units in the area to head up.
But in Carbon, they just say a general direction, which feels a lot worse to hear.
Attention all units. A wanted suspect associated to hit-and-run offenses was just reported heading west. Units in the area to respond.
In fact, they spent so little time reworking the cops that Cross can make an appearance in Pursuits, despite the fact that in the story, he's not a cop anymore. They didn't even bother updating his car to match the one he drives in Carbon. It's literally the same Corvette he had in Most Wanted. I could get over all of that, but I think the worst part is how the cops literally serve no purpose. You can beat the entire game without ever reaching Heat Level 2, so the only real purpose they have is to waste your time if you're unlucky enough to encounter them in a race. Well, that's not entirely true. Milestones are loosely in the game, but the only thing they do is unlock extras through the reward card system. And the stuff you get you can only use in Quick Race. One thing I will say is greatly improved from Most Wanted though is the new challenge series. In Most Wanted, the challenge series was very simple and it was just alternating between Tohobu time trials and pursuits where you had to complete some random milestone. It got tedious very quickly in that game, but in Carbon, the challenge series consists of 3 events for every event type in the game, ordered from a bronze challenge to a silver challenge and then finally a gold challenge, and they properly escalate in difficulty, so they're actually fun to beat unlike in Most Wanted. And that's Carbon. Even with its flaws, I still really like this game. I really like the vibes, the canyon races, the customization, not so much the story, but the game itself is well put together and still holds up in 2025 in my opinion. It always baffles me knowing that Black Box had to keep up with a yearly release window, and it's pretty obvious considering how similar their games are on the surface. But something Black Box was always able to do was make each game feel unique, which I will always appreciate. But that's all from me. What do you think of Carbon? Do you like it? If you like what I make here, feel free to subscribe. It really helps me out a lot and lets you see more of me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.